Howdy folks, Justin here. Today we are going to be talking about my top 5 cards from Fall of the Dark Brotherhood. Um, I took several things into consideration making this list. Power level, fun factor, new design space being explored, all of those things were things that I wanted to take into consideration. But it was cool because, we're a few weeks now into Dark Brotherhood, 11 days since it's come out. Um, the meta swelled with certain kinds of decks early on, and now there's a counter swelling with other things that are combating it. Uh, Overall, it's been a really fun experience for me. I've really enjoyed these new cards. Um, I've had a great time brewing decks. It's just super exciting, and I just it's the first time since I first started playing the game about a year ago where I've really had an unlimited number of options. It felt like for what kinds of things I could be doing. So without further ado, let's look at the cards. First, though, I have a special category of cards. These are underplayed Dark Brotherhood cards. Okay. The first one, there's just a handful of these. I just wanted to get these out of the way. Um, I got to shout out to Shadowmere, which I don't think is a bad card. I think Shadowmere, I think a ping effect for one is useful enough in almost every deck that Shadowmere is a reasonable card to be playing. Um, I previously called it the neutral Ungolem. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think Shadowmere deserves a little bit more respect than it's getting right now. So it's a card that I would definitely encourage you to check out at some point. Um, Not a lot to say about it. It's a pretty straightforward card, but just it's like a bad firebolt, right, or a bad rapid shot that eventually could become a huge threat and win the game. I think that that's a pretty reasonable thing to be running in a lot of decks, especially decks that cycle through their cards quickly. Anyway, so Gristlehide Dreg is the next one I wanted to talk about for underplayed cards. Gristlehide Dreg, I think, is a just incredible card. So the obvious comparison is to Pa Mat Rot Renegade or something like that. Let me find it real quick. Renegade, Reneg. That is not what Reneg. Got multiple renegades. Okay, Pa Mar Rot Renegade. Slay draw card 5 for 4/6. Uh, it's not difficult to see this card. I spelled Gristle wrong. As I'm in general, as more powerful than Gristlehide Dreg, and in a lot of situations it can be. Gristlehide Dreg, though, you Ice Storm, you draw a card, right? You Firestorm, you draw a card. You make any trade, any swing into an opposing creature with less than 5 attack, you're drawing a card unless that guy's got lethal. Gristlehide Dreg, you can cycle your rapid shots for 2 cards. There are so many things you can do with this card. I think Gristlehide Dreg it's a shame it's not being played in almost every mid-range deck. I think Gristlehide Dreg is absolutely fantastic. I didn't make a list because, I mean, while I do see it in the hands of some players, it's not. I don't think it's everywhere yet, and it really needs to be. I think this is a great card. Even if you just want get one card off of it, it's a 2 for 1, right? Like, because you're going to end up killing something eventually with this creature. It's a great card. As far as other underplayed cards go, there are some cards that are good that didn't make my list. As far as underplayed cards go, I don't really have a lot. The only other one I had was Penitus Oculatus Agent. I think Penitus Oculatus Agent is a lot better than I gave it credit for when I first reviewed it. Um, Especially given the recent resurgence of Sorcerer, and Battle Mage is coming back strong too. Let me show you a quick picture of what I faced on my final push to Legend, and this should help illustrate why I think this is important. So this was my last handful of games on the way to Legend. And you may notice something. Blue, 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 right? Battle Mage and Sorcerer are back with a force. And these decks are frequently running 9 to 12 cards that have ward synergies, or ward. So having the ability to steal ward from your opposing creatures is quickly becoming very important again. So, Penantis Oculatus Agent is a card I can see as a tech choice in a lot of decks. I'm considering trying it out in my Crusader list. Just something I wanted to point out. Okay, without further ado, let's get to our top 5 Brotherhood, Dark Brotherhood cards. Coming in at number 5 is Sanctuary Pet. A kind of unassuming card, a common card. Sanctuary Pet is more often than not a 3 Magicka Piercing Javelin. Not always, but the fact that when you shackle something in the Shadow Lane, removes it from, essentially removes the cover from it because you're swinging into it in the next turn. Sanctuary Pet's just an absolute beating. This card is great. This card is great in all sorts of decks. I can see it being played in mid-range or control assassin, tempo assassin, mid-range control, tempo, aggro, archer. All the archer decks want this card. Um, Scout, Scout, it's tough to say. I think it's probably at its weakest in Scout, but I think you could play this profitably in Scout pretty well. Maybe in place of, maybe for a more board control style deck, in place of if you were running Moonlight Werebat still. And in Monk, I think this card's great because if you're running the Pilfer strategy, this is a great way to get your guys in. Maybe after it Pilfers, it's going to survive the trade that your opponent was trying to set up. And if it doesn't, you know, if you can also use this to lock down a guard creature, take a turn off, and swing into it and kill it with the Sanctuary Pet. And if you run Monk Control, which is a deck I think is really pretty well positioned right now, Sanctuary Pet's just another tool in there to stall at the game till you get to your big bombs in the end. So, Sanctuary Pet comes in at number 5. At number 4, we have a tie, actually, between Little Girl and Cicero. Little Girl is a really powerful card. I think Little Girl's impact is most felt in Arena, but what I like, it's the debut of the change mechanic, where it becomes something else, keeps its items, keeps its debuffs, its buffs, all that sort of thing. So it's noteworthy for that. But it also it's a 5/5 drain for 4 a lot of the time, unless your opponent, if your opponent's not playing blue and or yellow, there's a good chance this is going to do some pretty good work. And by the time you're dropping a 4-drop, there's also a pretty good chance that your opponent has already spent their first Firebolt or Execute. So I think Little Girl is a really strong card. It's definitely, I think, worthy of a spot in my top 5. It's a card I'm looking forward to playing more with. And it's tied with Cicero the Betrayer because Cicero and Little Girl are not cards that you would put in every deck that runs purple. Although I think you could make a case for why you might want to in almost every deck that runs purple. They're not going to make it into every deck that runs purple. But Cicero is just an insanely powerful card. Spellsword decks have long struggled to draw cards, and Cicero offers the ability to draw a lot of cards. You can combo Cicero with Bloodpact Messenger to draw 4 cards in a turn if you want, and that's the sort of swing that the card draw factor is a large part of the reason people have played Mage Control over Spellsword Control for a long time. Cicero offers it's a pretty powerful ability there, and if you're playing the Spellsword Control deck, you're not really going to sweat it if your opponent executes either, which is of course the biggest fear with a 1/6 or 6. So those are my number 4 spots. Coming in at number 3, we have Underworld Vigilante. This, for a long time, was my vote for, before the whole set was revealed, for a long time, this was the most powerful card I'd seen revealed so far. How's it holding up now? I think it's holding up great. The additional reach that this gives decks is absolutely nuts. I think this belongs in every deck that runs red except maybe Archer decks since they have Cliff Racer, but running this with Cliff Racer gives you an awful lot of reach. Underworld Vigilante has won a lot of games, almost as many games as Dawnbreaker has won me in this season's Push to Legend. I just think Underworld Vigilante is, first of all, the ability to remove cover from opposing creatures firmly makes this a card that has a place in a control deck, where and in a red-based control deck, you might run into a situation where you don't have as many quality tough guard creatures as a deck running purple necessarily does, in conjunction with yellow or with red or with green even. Underworld Vigilante gives you a red spin on taking care of those creatures that your opponent is now just funneling into the Shadow Lane all the time because they are, trying to push for those last few points of damage, and you're trying to stabilize the board. Underworld Vigilante is great. It also, I mean, it's such a flexible card. The ability to just push 4 face damage gives you an incredible amount of reach that otherwise this color was just sort of lacking. Um, that's why it comes in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we're going to stay on the strength page and we're going to look at Garnag. Garnag was obviously a very powerful card. Part of the reason I picked this is because of the exploring new design space, but as players are getting better at playing with Garnag, Garnag is becoming crushingly good. Okay, I was playing against Maricon earlier today, and I was setting up for lethal, and he's playing a mage control list, and I knew that by using Garnag, I could keep him off of Dawn's Wrath. He said to me after the game, "Good game. Garnag kept me off Dawn's Wrath," because the more familiar you get with the appropriate time to use Garnag, the more absolutely back-breaking Garnag can be. I mean, I think it's at its most powerful in mid-range decks who are trying to beat control decks. Um, you know, if you're playing a strict aggro deck, maybe Garnag is sort of excessive because like you probably won or lost by the time your opponent's at 7 Magicka, but that's not necessarily the case. Garnag is good in Orc decks, obviously. But Garnag is just incredibly powerful. Super interesting mechanic to be adding to Red. And part of the reason I think, along with Underworld Vigilante, that Red is seeing such, a huge uptick in play lately. Uh, it wouldn't be fair, though, if Garnag was number 1, because there's one card that clearly has been on everyone's mind since Dark Brotherhood was released, and that card is Unstoppable Rage right here. Um, Unstoppable Rage is an incredibly powerful card. It is new design space. It is fun for a lot of people, and it created a new deck archetype, the Warrior Ramp Unstoppable Rage deck. Uh, so I can't argue. I mean, like, here's the thing: I don't like losing in one turn. I don't like being killed in one turn. But you can't argue with Unstoppable Rage's impact on the game or the meta. It's a really powerful card, and as people are learning to play around it, it's seeing less play. I think this is part of the reason that ward creatures are seeing a lot more play all of a sudden, after really falling off the radar. It is, it's just beastly, right? The interaction with all of the keywords, with slay mechanics, with drain, with breakthrough, with lethal, gives us a ton of flexibility, and you can play Unstoppable Rage in combination with any other color and see some positive results. Probably at its worst in Battle Mage, but I mean, the keywords you can get from these other colors are just super interesting and cool. So, Unstoppable Rage is my pick for the number 1 card right now from Fall of the Dark Brotherhood. Skeever Infestation, of course, the card I want to play with the most, but there you go, guys. I hope the season is going well for everybody, and I will see you all on the ladder. Bye-bye.